Good morning. So, we're going to continue our journey in learning to know Jesus in a new way with his disciples. So, the first way was in absence in the empty tomb. And then in the breaking of the bread. In doubt. In the morning. The disciples gathered in Galilee. They gathered and went to the mountain to meet Jesus. And he was already there. It was good to see him, even in this new way. But what were they supposed to do now? Listen, he's talking again. What was that? All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. What was he talking about? And then he said something that they could understand, but did not want to hear. Go everywhere. Tell my story, even this part, to everyone. Show them how to be good disciples. Tell them the story so they can become part of it, and baptize them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. This was too far to travel, too much to do. And then in their dismay, they heard him say, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And then he was gone. What did he mean? And as they walked back south to Jerusalem, they knew that they had been followers. And now they were to be leaders. They had been sheep, and now they were to be shepherds. They had come home for the last time, and now they were to make a home for others. Now, I wonder, is there something that you can bring to this story that helps us tell more about this story? Maybe the candle of your baptism. I don't know what you're going to get. You're the only one in the world who knows that. If you don't feel like getting anything, that's okay. Just enjoy what we make together. You're still part of what we make. So for today's story, I'm going to read In God's Name by Sandy Eisenberg Sasso, illustrated by Phoebe Stone. After God created the world, all living things on earth were given a name. The plants and the trees, the animals and the fish, and each person, young and old, had a special name. But no one knew the name for God. So each person searched for God's name. A farmer whose skin was dark like the rich brown earth from which all things grew called God source of life. And the girl whose skin was as golden as the sun that turned night into day called God, creator of light. And the man who tended sheep in the valley called God shepherd. And the tired soldier who fought too many wars called God maker of peace. And the artist who carved figures from the earth's hard stone called God my rock. And sometimes people who called God by different names were puzzled. They said every living thing has a single name. The marigold, pansy, and lily, the oak tree, sequoia, and pine. God must have a single name that is greater and more wonderful than all other names. And each person thought his name for God was the greatest. Each person thought her name for God was the very best. The farmer who called God source of life said, "This is the true name for God." And the girl who called God creator of life insisted, "This is the most splendid name for God." And the shepherd, soldier, and artist believed that they each had the perfect name for God, but no one listened, least of all, God. And so each person kept searching for God's name. The woman who cared for the sick called God healer. The slave who was freed from bondage called God redeemer. The grandfather whose hair was white with years called God ancient one. And the grandmother who was bent with age and sorrow called God comforter. And the young woman who nursed her newborn son called God mother. And the young man who held the hand of his baby daughter called God father. And the child who was lonely called God friend. And all the people called God by different names. And they tried to tell one another that their name was the best and the only name for God, and that all the other names were wrong. But no one listened, least of all God. So each person kept searching for God's name. And then one day, one person who called God the Ancient One, and the one who called God friend, and the one who called God mother, and the one who called God father, and all the people who called God by a different name came together, and they knelt by a lake that was clear and quiet like a mirror, God's mirror. And then each person who had a name for God looked at the others who had a different name, and they looked into God's mirror, and they saw their own faces and the faces of all the others. And they all called out their names for God: source of life, creator of light, shepherd, maker of peace, my rock, healer, redeemer, ancient one, comforter, mother, father, friend, all at the same time. And at that moment, the people knew that all of the names of God were good, and no name was better than another. And then all at once their voices came together, and they called God one. And everyone listened. Most of all, God. So I thought for closing today that we could share a little song, which is a prayer. Sometimes they say that if you sing, you pray twice. So sing with me. Be still and know that I am God. 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 Have a great week.